Alright, you guys ready to get started? Both of you. Alright, welcome everyone. My name is K. Michael Russell. I am a comic book colorist. Welcome to Twitch today. So this will probably end up recorded, end up on YouTube also. So just kind of explain what we're going to be doing tonight. You guys need to see this. There we go. So this is a Black Cat and Spider-Man pinup by Joe Mulvey. I met Joe, what was that, Seattle, I think, last year. And we had worked together once before for Comics Tribe, and he posted this image on Twitter a few weeks ago, days ago, I can't remember now. But I thought it was awesome, and I wanted to color it. So I asked him, and he sent over this version. And I've done all of the boring stuff, so you guys don't have to see all of that. So what I've done so far is I basically just set the base colors. Flatter filled in all the different sections with random colors, and I just changed those to my base colors. I did lighten the lines a little bit in the background because that's a little tedious too, so I went ahead and did that part. And yeah, I think we're ready to get going here. So I'll kind of talk you guys through my thought process while I'm working on it, and if you have questions, feel free to ask in the chat, which is there. There we go. Oh, I wasn't showing. Okay, there it is. Cool. Welcome, Tyrone. All right, so first off, I'm going to do a little bit with the background first. To me, it just makes more sense to set the background up and then put the characters in it, and have the lighting makes more sense to me that way. So just going to do a little bit of work on that, and then we'll get started on the characters. So we've got a city at night, so we've got street lights and lights from buildings and stuff like that. So we're gonna have like something about like that in the background, and then we'll do some glowing from the moon here slightly. This is just a big, soft, simple brush, really nothing too fancy. And I'm gonna leave the background alone for now because, like I said, that gets kind of boring and dry. The far background anyway, so we'll skip that for now. And one of the questions I get a lot from students or YouTube commenters is trying to figure out where to start images and not really knowing where the light should go, especially on things like backgrounds. And everything you do should always serve the story. And even on a cover like a pinup like this, it's not so much story as it is your focal points and where you want to draw focus and that sort of thing. And welcome, Rose. I try to keep one eye on the chat tonight. So for things like buildings, now if we wanted to be realistic with this, then you know the moon is probably lighting all this stuff up here, right? But that would be sort of distracting and doesn't really help us, and because we've got this sort of flow going at an angle. So instead of brightening it all the way up to the top, I'm just gonna sort of, this is even too, let's see, let's dim this a little bit. Bear with me a second here. So yeah, just kind of down again, kind of following this line, and the moon would actually kind of reflect off the wall a little bit, so that kind of works. But I'm going to keep that simple for now. I don't want to do anything too crazy with the wall. And so my plan for this, I actually did kind of, and I don't normally do this, but I did sort of a rough color sketch of this, I guess you could say, Now this is really rough. I mean, I don't know if how well you guys can see this on the stream, but like if you get close to Spider-Man, it's total garbage. But it's really just to give me an idea about what I wanted to do with the lighting. So I want that really bright, like light white bluish coming from the moon, and then everything else would be kind of more local color. So that's kind of that's the theory anyway at this point. A lot of this stuff ends up changing once you actually get started. So. Alright, so I'm going to let's start with her hair. And the way I'm going to render on this, because someone's going to ask, is, let's see, let me try something first here. Yeah, that should work. So this little group here is what I'm going to be rendering on. So I've got a group and then a mask next to it. I'm going to be painting on the mask, but in the group there's a levels adjustment and then a color just in color mode. So we're adding color and then we're also brightening within this one folder. So this is sort of one group in this layer. So this is something I haven't really played with that much before, and for things like this that are really just for fun, I like experimenting with things like this. So we're going to try this tonight and see how it works out. So if it fails miserably, we'll just start over and do something else. But I've been playing around with different rendering methods and shortcuts and ways to get faster and more efficient, because in this business that means a lot. So I'm really just thinking about the light from the moon right now. And we'll see where this goes. So we'll actually have like the light from the moon, then we'll have a bit of like a bounce light coming from the other side here, like toward us in a way. Whoops, let's do that. Like I said, if you guys have questions, feel free to use the chat. I'll try to keep one eye on that and check it every now and then. And a mistake that I see a lot of beginning colorists make is to render, like if I was doing this hair for example, they would render each individual little area the exact same way, and that's not really how light works. You know, there's going to be parts that get more light than others, so of course you want to keep that in mind whenever you're coloring. So right now I'm just really trying to get the light source from the moon. I'm not really thinking about much else at the moment. I'll come back and do more on these characters later. Yeah, Spidey has kind of got his butt kicked here, it looks like. So, sorry, Spidey fans. I'm a big Spidey fan myself, but he has seen better days at the moment. Oh, well, hello, Emmett. Emmett is 3 years old and loves Spider-Man. Spider-Man's taking a break right now. But yeah, I have liked Spider-Man for a long time myself, so get them while they're young. I mean, he's 3. I'm trying to, I'm trying to make this a little bit easier on him. Yeah, it's just yeah, fur is something. It probably takes a lot of practice. Fur and hair and things like that can take some getting used to. So I'm glad you're learning something here. And you'll notice that on, like, down here by her feet, like, I'm really not gonna get quite as bright with the highlights because I don't want it. I don't want her like lower legs drawing unnecessary attention. You know what I mean? Because the whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking, you know, where do I want the reader to look? You know, so I won't really do those really sharp white highlights on those sections. Thank you to all the new Twitch followers. And don't be afraid to mix up, you know, rendering styles, like whether you're using a lasso or a brush or combinations, you know. The question in the chat is, I see you're using cut and grad as opposed to painterly. Do you determine this ahead of time before you start, or is it determined by the style of the artwork you are working on? That's a good question. For me personally, I think I have generally a pretty good idea about what I want to do based on the artwork. Sometimes what I think is going to work doesn't work every time, but I think I have a pretty good feel for what's going to work on certain types of artwork. And with this particular piece, this style to me works really well with a very sharp kind of angular, kind of coloring style. So I was kind of, going that route on this one. So we'll see how it goes. You'll also see me sometimes, like I'll create a section that I want to render, and then like after I get started, try to figure out what I want to do with it. Playing around with different colors or whatever. I don't know if you guys saw my post on Twitter the other day, but my Mobile Studio Pro sounds like a diesel engine right now. The fan is obviously going out, so I have a this is an Intuos Pro, I think. I bought it last year. I can't remember. I think it's a Pro. Like 6x8 or something like that. And I still use this a lot on videos because it's actually trying to capture 4K in real time, which is like the screen on the Mobile Studio is 4K, so it's like I've noticed my computer wants to jitter every now and then with it, so I still keep this around a lot for videos. So the question is, hi, I'm new here. Hey, Jose. Love the Photoshop files. I guess he's talking about my Photoshop. I got my PSD files on Patreon. That technique where you use masks to change colors after your painting is not more complicated than just creating a new layer and then go to adjustments. I mean, what is the big advantage of this layers type? So adjustments are limited in a lot of ways, and you can never really get back to your original after you make an adjustment, unless you just undo it immediately. But like if I do an adjustment and then 20 minutes later I don't like it, I really can't get back to the original, and there's no way to salvage that. So what this allows you to do is make the change, and the original stuff is always there. Like your rendering is always available. So no matter what you do, you can always come back to where you started or change it to something else later. And adjustments affect everything underneath them, whereas this is just affecting the layer. And so that's why I like it. There seems to be a lot more flexibility on certain things. So yeah, that's why I do it. All right. Alright, so I don't know if I'm crazy about this bounce color here actually, but I'm also debating doing that thing where you draw a line around the character to help separate it from the background. Since there's a lot of, it's night, there's a lot of blue going on, I might do that toward the end. Can do that anytime, I guess. But definitely don't feel obligated to you know, coloring. I had a colorist recently tell me, Nolan Woodard was telling me that you know, there's as many coloring styles as there are colorists. So don't ever feel like, oh, I've got to use this style because I know this pro used this style. Like, it really doesn't matter how you get there. So don't sweat that stuff. Yeah, and color styles definitely evolve over time. Absolutely. What I'm doing now, I was not doing, you know, a couple of years ago, and so yeah. I mean, you're always learning at this. I mean, if you're not learning, something's wrong. so, so yeah, I've learned a ton of tricks over the years to get, you know, faster and more efficient, and still learning stuff all the time, all the time. Whoa, what was that technique you used to minimize the access lasso, if that makes sense? Alright, so lasso tricks real quick. There is a YouTube video on this that I did, so I won't go into a ton of detail, but so whatever you lasso, it's not doesn't mean you're done with it if you don't want to be. A lot of people don't realize this. They think, oh, I've got to redraw it completely. So if I want to add something to this, you can hold down Shift and add new areas. Okay. If you hold down Alt, it removes selections. All right. So anytime that you select something, you can always adjust it afterward. Always. So that is how that works. Magic. I still remember vividly, like starting out early on, not knowing that. I was just goofing around, like on my own. I wasn't like working for anybody, thank goodness. But because I didn't know what I was doing. I used to, yeah, just completely redraw sections. Like, I look back now and I'm like, man, I'm an idiot. Someone in this room is doing that right now. I don't mean you're an idiot, but. All right, so another little storytelling trick here. So, or ways to get the reader to look a certain place. So, readers tend to, when you're viewing something, tend to look for bright spots first. Your eyes just sort of drawn to brighter areas. So, if I left this blue highlight on Spider-Man the same all over him, you know, your eye's going to kind of bounce all over the place. So, on his head and his hand right here, I'm going to make those, and probably his arm a little bit, I'll make those a little bit brighter so that, and I'm not going to worry about making this back here brighter so much because I want you to look at his head, basically. So I'm just going to go inside this. And then same thing here in a couple of spots. And we'll see how this looks. There we go. So you see how now when you back away from it, your eye is kind of following from her face, which is kind of only the only warm thing on the page at this point, other than that red. So just a way to draw attention to important parts. And your pages should work even at a distance like that. Like, you should at least be able to see the important elements. I'm going to stop the stream for just a second and restart it immediately, just so this file size isn't enormous. Okay, actually it never stopped streaming, I don't think. It stopped recording, which is fine. Alright, so I'm going to do a bit of local color on Spider-Man, which is basically just the color of his costume, like under a red light. And just to help it'll look cooler that way. Whoops, let's get rid of that. What's up, man? My buddy Alan has joined us. Regular Nintendo. I still can't believe that you have that Twitter handle. Like, how is that not taken? Regular Nintendo is a great name. I love it. I've never really tried what I'm doing right here. I'm basically using the what do you call it? The local color as sort of like a bounce light here. I don't know how realistic that is, but I think it looks cool. Well, yeah, and also I have I was shocked that comiccolor.com was available, like when I signed up, because I opened that up maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and I can't believe it wasn't taken. So I guess to wrap your head around what's happening here, if you're wanting to try to do this technique, is I'm thinking about lighting it with a pretty much just a white light from this angle, like the light is basically coming from the viewer almost. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it anyway. And I kind of played around with some of these colors before I started to, again, save some time and save you guys having to watch me stumble through this. So back here, I'm not going to go quite as saturated as what I did on his head, because this is a little bit further back. So just enough to fill it in. That's basically it, because as things go away from you in the atmosphere, they tend to get less saturated. And even though we're talking about inches here, it's kind of a nice little trick you can do to trick the reader into think this is closer than his back, if that makes sense. And like same thing on his foot. Like I'm not gonna go like super saturated back here. Maybe just a little bit more on his shoulder. Alright, so I'm looking at this on I'm actually looking at OBS, like the streaming software on my other monitor. It's a little bit smaller, so it's a nice way of kind of stepping away from it. And it sort of shows me if it's working at arm's length, you know. So I definitely feel like there needs to be more contrast between Black Cat and the building behind her and what's going on there. I'm just not 100% sure how I want to do that yet. And I don't know if I've ever colored blood like this before either, so I can always experiment. Let's see. Why is that coming out that color? There we go. That's where Photoshop gets weird sometimes about putting like random colors in where I don't want them. Probably gonna come back to the blood. I want you guys sit here and watch me experiment for 15 minutes. Alright, I'm just going to start throwing some random details around. See what happens. And those of you that are just joining us, if you have questions, feel free to use the Twitch chat, answering questions there. Or just lurk and watch. That helped a lot. Her hair really wasn't bright enough because her hair is basically white, and even though it's night, like, you got to make the page work, so there just wasn't enough contrast. Yeah, that's the theory in here anyway. Basically just, whoops. Yeah, basically just reflecting moonlight here. I need to set up an action for that. It basically contracts the selection a little bit. Yeah, I hadn't even got to the catwalk yet. I'll be doing a little bit up there. Something. Might as well do that now. Joe did a good job with the shadows, so there's there's not a whole lot to do on those. All right, what do you guys think? I feel like it's getting close. Thank you, thank you. I did there's another video I'm editing it now, or this week, that it's just another live stream. I'm basically working through a cover like this. It wasn't a live stream. I wasn't recording it live though. And I'm editing out all the places where I'm just staring at it. And it's amazing, like in a 20-minute section, like there were probably 4 minutes where I was just sitting there staring at it. You know, I didn't realize how much time I spend thinking about stuff without actually doing anything. I just thought it was funny. So let's see. I don't know if I want to try any sometimes something like this, I'll do like a very subtle brightening toward the area overall, like super subtle. I don't know. I might try that and see. This could go. You don't want to go too bright that it's like washing it out and overwhelming it, but you can actually get a good bit brighter without it and have it still work pretty well. So, and basically, so like I can just get a big soft brush, nothing fancy, and just right where I want that brighter part. And you can, if you look at this on the mask, you can see like this is what I'm actually done on that layer. So all the dark areas are a little bit darker than the middle area. And Shadows behind the pipe on the left wall. Maybe. Well, I don't know. I don't really want to... There's no cast shadows for... There's no cast shadows for anything else, but we can do that. We can see what it looks like. I'm going to keep this really, really simple, but let's see. Yeah, it works. All right, well, I'm going to send this over to Joe and see what he thinks. And any other questions before we wrap this up? I'm cool with that. All right, thank you guys for watching. And Emmett, it's time for bed. Emmett is 3 years old, 4 years old. He's watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Dad said it's time for bed. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.